Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the long-awaited Crate 0.5.1 update. The first thing we're going to take a look at is a brand new set of Netherite Armor added by the mod, and that is the Netherite Diving Helmet, Netherite Back Tank, and Netherite Diving Boots. The diving boots basically make it easier to walk on the ocean floor or the floor of lava, as well as they give you ability to jump underwater, and they also give the ability to walk freely on mechanical belts and not be pushed around. The Netherite Back Tank has a very similar effect to the normal Back Tank, but just adding the ability to have more protection on it by default. And the Netherite Diving Helmet will allow you to see and breathe underwater and under lava, but it'll only allow you to do that when you have a full Netherite suit, so you need the Diving Helmet, the Back Tank, the Diving Boots, and then the regular pair of Netherite leggings. So now if I go ahead and throw myself into survival, I can go ahead and jump down into the Nether. And the first thing you'll notice is I can actually see underwater, and I have a little indicator down on the side that tells me how long I have to survive under here, which you get 15 minutes by default. And if you use the enchantment that comes with the mod capacity, you can get that all the way up to 30 minutes. You'll also notice I can jump super high well under the lava and come right on out and go about my day. You'll also notice that if I'm standing on like one block and my head is above the water, our back tank isn't actually using any pressure. Not using the durability out of the lava may or may not be a bug. We'll see if that gets patched in the future, but for now you can just kind of chill in the lava and have the time of your life. The next thing we're going to take a look at is Contraption Controls. So the typical use for Contraption Controls would be on a moving contraption. Right now, as this goes around, we'll see our wheat will get harvested, our wood and stone will get mined down, like so, and then our contraption will go back around. But this time, if I go ahead and right click on one of the contraption controls, you'll see it'll turn red, and it'll turn off being able to mine or harvest items. And I can go ahead and right click that to turn it back on. So right click to turn off, and then right click to turn on. You'll actually see our contraptions stop moving as it's going around the circle. Plus, we can actually control this with the filter slot on the contraption control to go by device. So if we, let's say we don't want to harvest, but we want to mine our wood and our stone, it'll mine the wood and the stone, but our harvest will be turned off and it will not mine the wheat. And these filters are added to your contraption controls by just right-clicking in the middle little box, and that adds it to your contraption. Another really neat way to control your contraptions is if you have contraption controls and you have your unassembled machine. If I go ahead and say I don't want to drill and I don't want to harvest the wheat, you can activate your redstone on it like that. And now when I start it, it's going to remember that that redstone was activated for those two items. So as it goes around, the only action it's going to do is mine our log. So it'll hit our log, you see our stone isn't being mined, and after the log breaks, our wheat will not be harvested. Next, we're going to take a look at the elevator pulley. The elevator pulley basically allows us to very easily make a working elevator. So there is actually only one requirement for actually getting your elevator started, and that is having a horizontal redstone contact touching another horizontal redstone contact. But I would definitely recommend always putting a contraption controls on your elevator, which allow you to really nicely control your elevator once we get this started. So if I go ahead and place down my elevator pulley, make sure it's powered, and I right click it, you'll see the pulley will extend down and connect up to our elevator, and this is now a live elevator. You can see our controls are ready to select what level we want, and our redstone contact is turned into an elevator contact. To add more floors, all we have to do is make a new redstone contact directly above the elevator contact, of course making sure it's facing the right direction. Now once you have your elevator contacts, you can actually change what floor this is. So if I want this to be floor 5 for whatever reason, I can set this to floor 5 and then leave this at floor 1, but we're just going to go ahead and for now set this to 0 and set this to 1. In this contact, we can also edit what doors are open, so we can do open all, north side, east side, south side, west side doors, or keep all doors closed. And it also tells you what direction you're facing. So right now we're facing south, but I want this door open, so I go ahead and turn this way. Now I'm facing north, so I would actually want north doors open or all doors open, and I'm just going to leave this to all doors open for now. Now the first way to control what floor you're going to is by using redstone. So go ahead and activate redstone. You'll see a door will close, and it will travel to that level. And I can go ahead and go back to floor 0, go that way, and go up to floor 1. Now the other way to control it is actually really cool, and that's using your contraption control. So if I hover over the little dial on my contraption control, I can actually select a floor. So I go on 0, 1, and select that floor. it'll be white when you're on the floor you're on, and it'll turn red when it's the next floor. And if I go ahead and right click this, you'll see we will travel up to our second floor, and then I can go back down to floor 0. Another thing you'll notice is that the elevator contact will actually give a redstone signal if we're on that floor. So if I go ahead and send this up all the way to floor 1, you'll see that redstone signal will turn off. And then if I use this button to call the elevator to my floor, once it arrives at my floor, that redstone signal will turn back on. And the last I'm going to show off the elevators, if I go ahead and place down a Nixie tube and connect it with the display link to our elevator contact, we'll see that we get this elevator selection, single line. We can go and select that. And now if I go ahead and send this up to floor 1, you'll see this will turn off. And then once it arrives at floor 1, you'll see that this updates and it tells us that it is at floor 1. So next we're going to take a look at what is honestly my favorite feature in this update, and that is the Copycat panel and Copycat step. So these are two small little pieces you can place down in your world and then place whatever block you want onto them, and they will take on the look of that block. So if I place my Copycat panel here and my Copycat step here, and let's just grab this cut limestone, you can see I can place a limestone into our panel and into our step, and it will take on those properties. Now obviously there's a lot of really cool decoration potential, but it also allows us to get decorative builds a little bit smaller. So you may have noticed these blocks on our little elevator here, and what I can do is I can just go ahead and put our andesite casings all over here, and we can have a fully contained elevator and still have a decent amount of space inside, while not taking up a whole lot of room in our world by needing full blocks kind of surrounding it, which is super duper cool. Now there are of course some limitations, so for example chests can't be placed into either the Copycat step or the panel. However, you'd be surprised by the amount of stuff that does work, so barrels can be placed both into the panel and the step. Now if you do have a directional block and you'd like to change the direction, all you got to do is hold that block, right click on your Copycat, and it will change that direction. Another thing to note is that in survival, placing an item down on a Copycat panel or step does take that item. So if you had any bright ideas of using this to make it look like you have a diamond room, you might have to think twice about that. And to get your item back in survival, all you got to do is right click the item with a wrench, and you will collect it back from your step. And then you can shift right click it to delete it, which also works directly from the block state while you get the block and the Copycat block back. One really interesting thing about the Copycat lamps is if I go ahead and hold a redstone or rose quartz lamp, I can actually change the block state and define if it's giving off light or not giving off light, which is super cool. And one thing that I just absolutely love is these aren't just a quarter of the block. Most of the blocks are actually given a unique texture. So if I take a look at a rose quartz lamp, you'll see that the side profile looks nothing like it does on our Copycat lamp. And that's because they actually took the time to edit in and make custom block textures for a lot of the Copycats. And these are just some of my favorites. We've got the little chunk of TNT. The copper actually looks really cool. I really like the horizontal frog light. I feel like it looks really cool, like an incandescent light almost. Of course, we got the little mini piston, little mini sideways hay bale. Slime block is actually really cool because it actually places that internal slime inside of our Copycat. And the composter makes a really cool little Copycat that kind of gives you a real shallow little bowl you can have. And also placing bars. This works with iron bars or the new andesite, brass, and copper bars. You can paste those into a panel and they look really nice. And one neat little thing that I'm sure some of you want to play with, there is actually a command that will allow you to automatically change the block states to something that might not be allowed. So you can see I can actually make myself a flat anvil, even though by default anvils cannot be placed into Copycats. And I'll have that command down in the description, but do be warned, if you place a Copycat into a Copycat, it will crash your game and corrupt your world. So use with caution. One last note, connected textures do work in Copycats, which is super cool. Next, we're going to take a look at 3 new blocks, and that is the block of andesite alloy, which is just crafted with 9 andesite, the block of industrial iron, which is crafted by stone cutting 1 iron ingot to get you 2 industrial iron, and then finally the block of experience, which is just crafted with 9 experience and a grid. Now the really interesting thing about the block of experience is it gives off light, and the light level is actually higher than that of torches. So if you want to light up your world and have extra experience to spare, that might be a good option for you. So now we're finally on to the large water wheel. So the large water wheel is basically a new early game water source that you can craft by just taking a water wheel and adding additional 8 planks on top of it. Now the large water wheel works much the same as a small water wheel. However, if you have even one flowing block of water, it will be working at max capacity. So you don't need to have the whole wheel going all the way around, which I really like because it means we can be a little more creative and a little more decorative about how we place our wheels and not waste any of that space making the whole loop with the soul sand to kind of like get our full power out of our wheel. Now our large water wheel does spin at half the RPM of our small water wheel. So you can see our small goes at 8 and our large goes at 4. However, the large water wheel generates 512 stress units, while the small only generates 256. So as long as you have the space, it's definitely worth crafting up your large water wheel. The other really neat thing about the large water wheel is if spruce isn't the vibe you're going for with your base, you can actually right-click it with the plank of any wood of your choosing, and it will change textures to meet that plank. So whatever vibe your base is going for, you can update your water wheel to match. Now this next item we're going to talk about was one that really came as a surprise to me. Everything else we either knew about or wasn't too much of a surprise and really fit in with kind of the direction Create was going. However, the Mechaincal Roller was not something I was expecting. So you can use the Mechaincal Roller on whatever moving contraption you want. However, they're going to work best and really are meant for trains. Now what the rollers are meant for is to basically clear terrain for your train path. So what I have here is I've got my rollers just attached to a train. I'm going to go ahead and assemble my train, hop in my seat, get in the controls, and as I move my train forward, you'll see it'll break all the blocks in its path, which is really cool and should be really helpful for making tunnels. One thing you'll also see is those broken items will directly go into any storage you have on your contraption. Another thing you can do with rollers is if you put a material into its paving slot, it will basically place that into all rollers attached to your machine. And now when I go ahead and hop into my seat, assemble my train, it will not only break blocks in front of me, but also pave the ground. So if you want to very quickly just kind of do whatever texture you want on the ground of your tracks, you can now do it with mechanical rollers and save a ton of time, breaking everything under your train tracks and replacing it back down. Also, this of course does work up slopes and around curves, and will actually place half slabs down if the block you're using has a half slab variant. Now there are actually two other modes for the Mechaincal Roller. The first we're going to take a look at is the straight fill below mode. So we're going to go ahead and activate this train, hop in our driver's seat, and basically what this will do is it will fill in a pillar all the way to the ground. So if you don't want to just build a suspended bridge and you actually want a pillar reaching all the way down, you can now do it using the rollers and save a ton of time. And the final mode is the sloped fill below mode. So this is going to be very similar to the straight fill mode, where if I go up this little ramp, you'll see it'll actually place a slope down and just kind of build up a mountain. So if we want this to look really natural as we're kind of building our track around our world, this is a really clean and really easy way to make that happen. Overall, these rollers are going to save us hours and hours of our life building these crazy train networks, and I'm super excited to have them in the game. Next, we're going to take a look at a few new decorative blocks added by the Create mod. The first is we now have an andesite and a copper door, which when right-clicked have this really cool little folding animation over to the side, which I really love, and if you go ahead and place two of the same door, you'll actually get the folding animation as if you're opening a regular door, and it just looks absolutely amazing. We also now have a brass door variant, which is much similar to the train door. So I can place these next to each other, and they'll both open up together and look really nice, and I'm sure all of these doors will be really helpful for a lot of builds. We also have andesite, brass, and copper bars, which all look really nice. The copper bars especially are my favorite. I bet you could build some really neat builds with them. But honestly, they all look great as windows, as fences, or whatever else you can imagine. I'm excited to see the really strange and interesting ways you guys end up using these new bars. And the last decoration block, but certainly not least, are the new andesite, brass, and copper scaffolding. So these place very similar to vanilla scaffolding, where it'll kind of place whatever direction you're looking, or you can hold shift to place it, and basically build out your scaffolding that way. The one difference is going to be when you go to like place a horizontal scaffold, you'll notice that it kind of places this little half slab, and we can basically walk on top of it, but not phase through it. So this is just basically like a normal block we can walk on and build with, which I really like and I think should work out pretty cool. And you can see our three different variants have the three different half slab top variants, and yeah, they just look gorgeous. Now with this new system, we're no longer limited to just a few blocks as with the generic Minecraft scaffolding, but we can now extend out pretty much infinitely, if not actually infinitely. However, the one thing that we do lose is with regular scaffolding, you break one and your whole scaffolding system breaks, where now the crate ones, they will just kind of float in midair and turn into the slab variant. So not ideal, but definitely still will be really helpful for not only decorative builds, but also as scaffolding. So now it's time to take a look at clipboards. Clipboards are essentially a new book variant added by the crate mod, where you can right click in here and basically add whatever you want and also check these items off. So it could be really helpful if you have a build you want a checklist for, or like you have some notes you want to pass on to a friend that you want them to fill out, and it should work out really cool. And as you noticed, we can actually place these down. So if you hold shift and right click, you can actually place your clipboards down in the world. And if you hold shift and right click again, you can pick them up and carry them along with you. Now these do actually have some really neat secondary functions. The first is if you write in clipboard, you can actually right click on the display board and it will display that line of text on your board. Now the way this works is it'll basically like go top down. So if I have this like too tall, I can right click here and it'll place test test. Or if I just go ahead and extend this like a 4 tall and place it here, you'll see it'll place it on these two rows. So you could actually have a really long clipboard, write it here, edit it, and then very easily write to your display boards without needing to get name kegs and go into anvils over and over again. The next thing to do is actually copy actions from one item to another. So a real simple example of this is funnels. So I can basically right click on one funnel to copy the settings, then left click on another funnel to paste those settings. So it'll be a really easy way if you want like an exact setting setup to very quickly copy and paste it to other funnels. And this doesn't just work on funnels, it works on pretty much anything. So if you have a whole bunch of windmill bearings you want all facing counterclockwise instead of clockwise, you can just right click your clipboard on one windmill bearing set to what you want, and then left click it on another one, and that will change our direction for us automatically. The next thing we need to use clipboards for is in a schematic cannon. So I have a schematic set up here, and I can actually place my clipboard in here, and it will give me the list of everything I need to make this. So this is really helpful because we can actually go out in our world, and as I collect these things in my storage room, I don't have to come to the schematic cannon to check it off. I can just kind of check them off as I go, which is really helpful. Plus, I can also have this little button that says erase all checked items. So if I want to keep everything on one page instead of paging through, I can just hit that, and it'll bring me back to where I was. And these do have the same functions of books. So I have these barrels here. If I go ahead and take some barrels and add it into my schematic cannon, place it back in our checklist printer, you'll see they're no longer here on the first page, but instead up here on the last page. So it has all the functionality of a regular book plus more. And then the final new addition is we also now have mangrove windows and mangrove window panes, which all look really nice. So now that we're through all of the new additions added to the Crate 5.1 update, we're going to get on to all of the changes. I'm going to go through these items a little bit faster so you can find the whole change log linked down in the description below. The first new change is a ton of the blocks and items now have brand new textures, which I'm now showing off here with a before and an after shot. Along with all those texture updates, when you now have encased belts that have a block directly over them, it'll place a little support which looks super duper nice, and I'm really a big fan of this feature. Valve handles can now be used with mechanical bearings to very precisely set the angle of rotation, and this can also be modified so you move it at a specific degree at a time that you need. Ropes from rope pulleys can now be climbed. Chests and barrels can now be opened up in contraptions, however sadly ender chests still do not work. Multiple pulleys that are unconnected to the power can now all connect up to the same platform as a synchronized group. Display boards now update text instantaneously with a higher RPM. So it takes a few seconds at a lower RPM, instantly updated at a higher RPM. Water wheels are no longer directional and water can flow in any direction. Water wheels now move at a single speed, so there's no point to have water on all four edges. Water also will not spill over the top edge of a water wheel. And just like the big water wheels, any type of wood can be used to decorate your water wheel however you'd like. Chutes can now be encased by using blocks of industrial iron. When using either the copper or netherite back tank and diving helmet, you will now have aqua affinity. Most items no longer require a wrench to update. So instead, if you hold right click on the area you were to update them, you do get a new little clicker to turn clockwise or counterclockwise on this bearing. Or on a filter, you can change your extract amount. On a rope pulley, you can change what movement mode, and so on and so forth for all the different blocks in the mod. The one item I have found that does still require a wrench is the linear chassis. So you cannot update it without a wrench, but you can update with a wrench. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this change just because it really does slow you down when you're just trying to move stuff by 1 tick or 2 ticks at a time. Also, quick mention, if you have an item that has a lot of area to scroll, if you hold shift, it will automatically click to one of the preset numbers. Filtered item extraction now has a selection where you can do up to a certain item. So I can basically set this to up to 32. So if I were to like place a stack and like 16, you'll see 32 will come out at a time. When I place a 16 out, it'll still come out because it's basically saying, is it 32 or less? Then I will extract it. Boilers will now indicate what water input rate you're at and what water input you need to use if you're below the input rate you need. Pumps no longer change direction when giving a different rotation direction, and now only can be changed via a wrench or via a deployer using a wrench, so you can still automate them. Items in a mechanical saw can now be right-clicked to remove them, so if you accidentally place something into a saw, you can right-click it to get it back. When crushing gold, you now get double the experience. So with copper, zinc, or iron, you get a 75% chance of 1 nugget, and now with gold, you get a 75% chance for 2 nuggets. Mechanical saws, mechanical drills, and deployers now have the function where you can automatically place blocks just by looking at the face, which is going to save a whole bunch of time because I can't tell you how many times I've had to build a whole wall of these and just been frustrated about how many times I have to place and replace blocks just to get these all oriented how I need. Belts, depots, ejectors, and funnels can now be waterlogged. The deployer item filter has now moved to the side versus where it was on the front before. The content observer has been renamed to the smart observer, and boy does he look happy about that change. And it will now output a redstone signal if a block in front of it matches the block in its filter. Also, stockpile switches have been renamed to threshold switches. And one neat little detail is smart observers and our threshold switches can now be placed vertically. Nuggets of experience can now be used 1 by 1 by holding shift and right clicking, where before you'd use the entire stack at once. Hand cranks no longer take hunger if you're using an extendo grip. And finally, the World Shaper and Potato Gun now have a brand new holding animation where you hold them with 2 hands. This really was quite an amazing update, and it makes me super excited to see what's next for the Create mod. Let me know down in the comments below how you guys feel about the new update and what your favorite features are. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye-bye.